Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. This week on the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, I'm speaking with Sarah Watson. Sarah is a fan of chocolate, traveling, and cartwheels in the grass. She is the creator of Calm at the Restoration Project. She believes your time, energy, heart, and brain space are precious and must be protected. Sarah is dedicated to assisting others create calm in their everyday because calm leads to changes that positively impact people and our community. In this episode, Sarah and I discuss self-knowledge and its role in setting New Year's goals. We also talk about why rest is so important for each of us. Sarah shares reflection practices to help create desired memories for the year, choosing a word of the year, and she suggests practices for creating ease, peace, calm, and intention. Sarah Watson, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I make this mistake. Must be a rookie podcaster mistake. I always have these great conversations with my guests, and I'm like, I think I even said it. We need to hit record because we're having a great conversation, and I want to capture it. But before we get into what our topic is going to be for today, could you introduce yourself to the listeners, share about your family and what you do?
You bet. Thank you. I'm Sarah Watson. I am the creator of Calm at the Restoration Project. I have a family, 2 daughters, 1 son, a husband, partridge in a pear tree.
All the above.
All the above. And I love to go on walks. I love to eat chocolate. I love to do cartwheels in the grass.
Yes.
I am a joyful person, but also a reflective person. So thank you for having me on because I've been listening and the Marvelous Middle Age has been having conversations that are so important. So thank you very much for the invite.
Well, you're welcome. You know, when I saw your email address that was the creator of Calm, I'm like, okay, I need to talk to this person because I think one thing we could probably all agree on to some extent is we all could use a little more calm sometimes in our lives, right? With all the hustle and bustle. You obviously have a very busy life personally with, 3 kids and your husband and work and all the things going on. So the creator of Calm, that is just the most perfect title I think I've ever heard for a role in an organization. So we need to be more creative about titles. And I love that one. So I was like, oh, I have to talk to Sarah. This is important. Well, we met through Lindsay Leahy. When Lindsay came out to record her episode, you came with her and it was so much fun. We had so much fun. I was so glad to meet you. That was a great episode that we recorded that day. And again, just meeting you, I'm like, I have to get to know this person a little bit more because you're just so warm and so friendly. And so thank you for being on. I think this is going to be a great topic to talk about. So thank you, Lindsay, for another introduction. I've met so many great people through her. So
yes. Thank you, Lindsay, for introducing
us.
Yes,
I know. She's going to start asking for some kind of like cut or some cut of what I don't know, but she'll be like, hey, can I get a referral bonus? But yeah, she's just been such a great connector for me. So I really appreciate that.
That is one of her gifts.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, on this season of the podcast, we're talking about easing into the new year, giving ourselves a gentler start. We were talking again before about just the hustle and bustle of the holidays, of life, of just the day to day that we get ourselves into. And I think there's some pressure that some of us may feel as the new year kicks off, that we need to do all the things, set all the goals, make all the intentions, have this master plan with, goals and sub goals and tasks and all these things to get our new year off to the perfect, wonderful start. And if that's something that serves you well, that you do, whether it's professionally, personally, that's great. I am not here to say to not do those things. I do those things. I have some things that I'm going to be working on this year that I feel really good about, and I'm breaking it down into smaller, more doable tasks and bite-sized pieces, right? But I think there's just this pressure that we feel about what a new year should look like or should feel like. And so I wanted to chat with you a little bit because, as we just said, you have a very busy life. You have a family and a household and a professional life and your own interests and things that you're up to. So tell me a little bit about how that feels to you. Do you feel that pressure? Do you have that sense? And what does a gentler, easier, calmer start look like for you in the new year?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Nicole. I feel it too. And I am a big believer in we have to know ourselves to know what serves us. That's a lot of what we talk about with the Restoration Project. Our mission is build connection, restore intention, and inspire action. And so build connection is we really have to understand ourselves. And so, for example, myself, in my top 5 strengths through Gallup Strengths Finder, I have achiever in my top 5. Many driven people do. And achiever can be our best friend and it can be our worst enemy. And so I know that about myself. And so I feel that pressure too of when the new year is coming and it is upon us, I start to think, what's going to happen in the new year? What am I going to tackle? What's going to be new this year? What am I going to add? Which new things am I going to try? What am I going to try to develop personally? What things am I going to try and hit professionally? And it's all of those targets and milestones and tasks and goals. And I have to really take a very intentional, hard pause and remind myself that simply because the calendar is flipping to January, that does not mean that everything is magically going to shift, change, happen. All of a sudden, I'm going to go into this new version of myself because I can get into that mode. So a great story that I love to share is after our second child was born. That particular child was born in June, and so think 6 months from June is right around December. And so every young parent has been in this mode of, okay, if I have my child, then after that, I want to start to feel like myself again. And part of feeling like yourself again sometimes can mean I want to look like myself again, right? I want to fit into my clothes again. I want to feel good again. And so after that, our sweet baby was born June. Come December, it was, okay, it's been 6 months. I want to start feeling like myself again and looking like myself. And I want to wear the clothes that I used to wear. And so I set this big goal for, okay, 6 months post baby. And then where the calendar was flipping to January. And here comes that pressure of, okay, I'm going to set all these goals. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to change what I'm eating. I'm going to do all these things because I want to feel like myself and look like myself for the start of the new year. And so I actually got in touch with a nutritionist. And at the time I was breastfeeding our second baby. And I wanted to make sure that my milk supply was going to stay stable while I was trying to accomplish these wild goals. And the nutritionist listened to me. And she saw me come in with my notebook. Nicole, you should have seen this notebook.
Well, of course.
Of
I
course.
can imagine.
And I had all these things written down, all these scribbles of what I'm going to do for exercise and nutrition and what I'm going to do.
All those things.
All the things.
Yes.
And she looked right at me and she said, we need to think of this as a 3-legged stool. You're thinking about the food part, the nutrition, how you're going to nourish your body. You're thinking about the exercise part, how you're going to move your body. We also need to think about number 3 of the 3-legged stool, which is how are we going to sleep? How are we going to rest our body? And I looked right at this nutritionist And I thought, what is she talking about? Sleep. I have a new
What a
baby at home
sleep. Yeah.
too. And I thought, I can't squeeze that in. I can't fit in sleep. That's not in my plan, right? That's
Right.
not in my goals. That's not on my notebook. That's not on my sheet. And she said, Sarah, if you don't sleep and your body doesn't have time to rest and restore and recharge, none of the other pieces of the stool are going to hold up and do well. And that was a message that I needed to hear. I still need to hear that message over and over, that easing into the new year, it can come with goals. It can come with targets. It can come with excitement around milestone and new things. But I also have to remind myself that in order to be that person and in order to do the things that I want to do, both professionally and personally, I need to sleep. I need to rest. I need to recharge. I need to have those moments of periods of nothing. And when I sleep, I'm a different person. And then I can tackle those things. So oftentimes coming off of holidays and end of the year, end of the quarter, in January, when I'm feeling the pressure of all of those pieces are coming at me, I have to remind myself, Nicole, over and over that sleep has to be part of my three-legged stool.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. I love that for a number of reasons. One is you talked about connection and knowing yourself and knowing who you are, what serves you well, what does not serve you well. And then talking about rest. I think a lot of people, I think there's a lot out there now about why rest and sleep and recovery is so important. Whether you're on a health journey or whether you're maintaining or whatever, it is critical to all of our functions of our physical health and our mental health. But even in a broader context, why rest is so important for our soul, because when we're going, and we don't give ourselves time to recover, whether it's recovery in between workouts, whether it's rest after a really stressful holiday season, whether it's calm and rest after, something, monumental has happened, or maybe it's just rest on a daily basis in the mundane and routine of life. Things can get off course really quickly. And I'm so glad that you shared that, because you went in there, that was not on your agenda. You had the notebook with all of the things you were going to do, the nutrition plan, the workout plan, all the, goals and milestones. And I'm going to wear this size by this time and do this and this and this, but rest. It didn't occur to you. And I don't think that's unique. I think a lot of people don't have that on the radar. And so I don't think that's uncommon. That's not something you hear people say. I think especially to your point, for people who have that tendency to want to do all the things and set all the goals, and whether it's a need to achieve or whether it's just a desire to have lots on their plate and they feel like they thrive better in those settings, I don't think rest is something that is a part of it. And I think we need to make a part of it. Now, I understand too, some people do have a lot going on. There is a lot of chaos in their life, or there's just a lot happening. They have, lots going on. And so, but I would encourage, if you're listening today, to think about that a little more. If you're sitting there going, well, you don't know my life, Nicole and Sarah, you don't know what I have on my plate. And no, we don't, we don't, but I would encourage everyone, it's just one call to action, is to think about rest and where can you find pockets, even if it's just 10 minutes. Maybe it's 10 minutes to just go outside. No, earbuds or AirPods in, nothing in your ears. Just go outside, and when it's warmer, if you're in the Midwest, don't do that right now, because it's really cold. But, or maybe you do, maybe you bundle up. I don't know. But 10 minutes, just go for a spin around the neighborhood, walk, take a brisk walk. Or maybe it's just something where you're sitting in a cozy chair with a journal, with a cup of tea, and you're reflecting. It's something to calm your brain, calm your mind, calm your spirit. That's so important. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is something I just don't think people think too much about.
Yeah. So. It's easy to ignore, but it's also critical to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we're called to rest. I mean, I think if you look at different, some of the literature that's coming out now, different books, or if you're a person of faith, if you are into scripture at all, we're called to rest and to recoup ourselves. So as we've stated, you're a busy, wife, mom, colleague. Is there anything that you have found helpful specifically to help you in this season of trying to rest, or to kick off the new year in a little bit more gentle fashion? Are there practices you have or things that you like to do to help you with that in your own life?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for asking that, because it can look and feel different by person and the stage or season of life that they're in. One of the things our team talks about at the Restoration Project is thinking and reflecting on the one important question: what is meaningful and valuable to me in my life right now? And so I'll take that a step further, like myself, for example, with family and life and work and wanting to be a person and have interests and hobbies. In January, I try to think, what do I want to have as a memory come December? So here comes January 2025, right? So my brain it doesn't always think futuristically, but I put myself in that dream state of what memories do I want to have come December? When I'm in December 2025, what type of memories am I creating or wanting to have with not just myself as a person, but also with our kids, with our family, with my girlfriends, and the experiences that I want to have. So if I'm dreaming ahead to December, what memories do I want to create? And so thinking back to that important reflection question of what's meaningful and valuable to me, if I can hone in on that, then I can start to think, what does the new year need to look like, and what do those seasons need to look like throughout the year? Another thing that our team does, which is it's a fun exercise and it's a very intentional exercise, is we do practice one word of the year. So that's where we go through an exercise of exploration individually, spiritually, on our own, to discover what's going to be our one word of the year, what's going to be our intention set for the year. And so that's a neat practice that our team has done. So each of us individually have our own word of the year, and collectively we do a theme as a team for the year. And finally, Nicole, I will also share that when I think about what does it look like to ease into the new year, I think about going back to the basics and the simplicity. You had mentioned going back to basics of, with our family, our kids, they love to hear about what's coming up, what's next. And so we don't have a fancy electronic system or fancy devices or anything like that. It's a paper calendar on the fridge, going back to the basics, keeping it simple, something that I can maintain, right? And not this crazy, overdone, complex system that's going to put one more thing on my plate. I'm always trying to figure out ways to delete things off the plate.
Amen to that. I love that. Yes. Yes to deletion, removing. Yeah.
Yes. So anytime we can remove or simplify or delete things off our task list or our plate, those are the types of things that I'm seeking for both myself and family. And I know your listeners are very in touch with, what's going on in the world and just what's new and those types of things. But I also encourage listeners to think about, how can we tune out some of that noise so that we can hear our own voice and hear ourselves, to understand, back to that important question, what's meaningful and valuable to me, not to the people that I follow or pay attention to, not in this newsletter that I opened, not on what I heard on my favorite media outlet, simply listening to ourselves on what's most meaningful and valuable to me, and what memories, right? What memories do we want to create?
That is incredible. And again, I love everything that you're saying there. Reflecting back to, fast forward, say it's December 2025, and reflecting back, what do you want 2025 to look like in terms of your memories with your loved ones, with the people in your life, with colleagues, whatever the case may be. That's such a great way to do that because it puts it in such a positive frame, I think, because you're looking at it from the standpoint of what do I want to look back on, fondly, what do I want to look back on to say, oh my gosh, remember that, trip we took or that overnight that we, maybe it was a couple's getaway we did, or maybe it was just this fun night at home. We had a game night and made a pizza or whatever. I'm making things up here, but what are those things you want to look back on with family, with friends, with colleagues that just fill your cup and fill your soul and fill your heart and your spirit. That's amazing. I am actually going to do that. I am going to put that down as something I'm going to do because we have some things planned as a family for this year, but I really need to be like, okay, let's, look at this. What memories do we want to create from those things? I am also a word of the year person. I don't have mine yet for 2025, but I'm working on it. And I love that. A lot of people will be like, oh, word of the year. It's like, okay. And maybe that isn't your thing. If it's not, that's totally fine. What I love about the word of the year, though, is it's not, my 25 goals with detailed, sub goals and tasks and this and this and this. It's a broader, bigger concept that I can just look to as kind of a guidepost, kind of a light, like a lighthouse almost, like, okay, this is something. And, and if every single solitary thing that you do in the year doesn't, 100% connect to it, that's fine. I think somebody like, well, I, put this as my word of the year and, nothing I'm doing relates to that. That's not the point of it. It's just to give yourself kind of a very broad concept, guidepost framework to give yourself a little bit of direction or a little bit of guidance in what you want to do.
Exactly.
And that's why I love it because everything I do doesn't have to directly have a solid line connection, but it gives me a way to say, okay, these are my, this is something that I just really want to think about for the year and how I can guide my life, because it would be real easy, and most of us do end up getting pulled in 20 different directions. So maybe this just gives me a little more focus, a little more of a structure that way. And then again, I said amen, and I truly mean it to the deletion. I think sometimes sometimes it's unintentional, we make our lives so much more complicated than they need to be. I'm a paper planner person. We have the paper calendar on the side of our fridge. That's what we use as a family. It is simple. I can do it. It doesn't have to be and if the latest, greatest technology solutions is working for you, really look at it. Is it really working for you? Great. If your family or whoever you're using it with buys into it and it works for everybody, great. We found what works for us. You're probably finding things that work for your family. That's what you should do. You don't have to do what the family down the street's doing or the person on Instagram or TikTok is doing. You do the solution that works for you, whether it be to do with time management or whatever the case may be. Use that and remove white space. I love white space on the calendar. Some people are scared by white space. They don't like to see that there's nothing. I'm like, oh no, I love nothing more than, a day with nothing planned except for me waking up out of bed, and then the day is open. I personally love that. I like having less. And I think as I've gotten older, I've whittled down because I've decided what's important. Who do I want to spend my time with? What do I want to spend my time doing? That's what's important to me. The white space is a welcome thing because I've been there, and I'm sure you have it too, where there is no white space.
Yes.
And you're just going from thing to thing to thing, and that's okay too. But things, if you can create some margin, gosh, do it.
It is a gift. Yes, the white space. Thank you for bringing that up. It is having white space, blank space on the calendar, simplifying, deleting. Yeah, that is a gift.
Right. I love that. And again, I think it really speaks to how do we give ourselves some grace in this new year? How do we create capacity and space for ourselves to enter the new year feeling really good about where things are going. So we have listeners to this episode. Do you have any encouragement to share? Anything, if someone is sitting there going, gosh, I want this for myself, anything that you would just say as a word of encouragement to someone listening as they're thinking about this concept and how they might move forward with it?
Of course, yes. And encouragement can come internally. It can certainly come externally if you want to have a pal, buddy system, all of that. Internally, if you're thinking to yourself, how can I do this, right? How can I start the new year with ease, peace, calm, and intention? I encourage our listeners to listen. I'm encouraging the listeners to listen. And what I mean by that, Nicole, is listen to ourselves. We have to listen to ourselves internally, building that connection within ourselves to be able to hear our own voice. And so going into this month of January and New Year, for myself personally, I like to go on winter walks. I go out, I bundle up. The winter gives me that spark of fresh air. It really wakes up my brain, my spirit, my soul, and it forces me to listen. There is no other noise in the depths of winter when you're outside and you're in a colder period, a slower period, possibly a snowy period if you live in that type of climate. And so I encourage our listeners to listen to themselves. And that takes practice. It takes slowing down and takes a beat. You can start with simply 5 minutes with brushing your teeth. You could start with listening in the car on your own. Turn off the radio, do some listening in the car. It can be a quick 2 minutes before bed, listening to our own heart, our own soul. And so I encourage our listeners to get into the practice and the habit of listening to our own self, listening inside. And the other thing, this is a fun one, and it can be very, again, small, simple, small steps, right? Is especially during winter when it's a little chillier and the weather is cooler and the days can be darker. I either start or end the day with what I call a heart hug. I learned this in a class when I was working with students at a nonprofit that I was in. We had students that were experiencing chaos at home or just having, different experiences in their lives that most adults don't experience. And so we had to learn different tactics and ways for them to de-escalate during the day when they're at school in the classroom. And we would use something very simple called a heart hug. And so a heart hug can be, you take one hand and you put it across your shoulder. You're making a diagonal across your shoulder, over your heart preferably. And you take your other hand and you wrap it around your waist and you create this cocoon of sorts, this hug that you're basically giving yourself a heart hug. So you could either start the day with a heart hug or you can end the day with a heart hug. Either way, it's a practice, again, of pulling yourself back inward, building that connection with yourself. That's what we talk about at the Restoration Project, build connection within, and give yourself that heart hug. Start the day or end the day with a heart hug, and it will lift you up in a new way, and it will help you practice that art of listening.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I wanted to do it right now, but I'm like, I've got a mic in one hand. I'm going to do it though. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. I love that because, first of all, we don't do either of those things for ourselves. We would tell others to do that.
Yes.
But do we do it for ourselves? To literally hug yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the children that you worked with at the nonprofit. There are people that don't experience a physical hug from someone in their lives. So we can do that for ourselves and turn inward and do a practice that shows our self-love for ourselves. And that's huge. And I also loved your other practice of going out, whether it's a cold winter walk like you're talking about, or in the car, no podcast on, no radio on. I'm saying this, I'm a podcaster. Don't have a podcast
That's
on.
right.
Try it. Try this. I did this the other day, and I'll tell you why I did it. Have silence, and again, it's better if you don't have, your kids in the car in the back jabbering, but if that's only time you can do it, that's okay too. But having just quiet time with yourself. And I'm a big journaler. I tend to journal, but even not writing, because that creates a little bit of noise too, right? So even just sitting quietly, whether it be in the car, whether it just be, if you're able to do that for 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up or some other point during the day. Again, just to build that reconnection, because some of us aren't super connected to ourselves, and because we're looking at the external world for connection so
Yes.
oftentimes, or to other people for connection. But to do that, that's very powerful. And those are two things that are very doable. One, but I did that the other day. So I'm always listening usually to a podcast in the car, and I just attended, and this is just a plug for the Restoration Project, because they're amazing and awesome. And I will link to the Restoration Project in the show notes. The work that they're doing is amazing. But I attended a workshop not too long ago, and it was led by the awesome and amazing Brooke Fitzgerald. And she talked about driving in the car with silence. And I was like, oh, well, no, I need my music on. I need to, be singing, Mariah Carey. It's Christmas time, come on. Or I need my podcast on. I need to be listening to my podcast. But the other day I did it. Nothing on. It was just me in the car. I was driving somewhere, and it was maybe 15 minutes. I mean, it wasn't a super long amount of time, but just being with myself, present with myself, it was very powerful. And it's something I'm practicing as often as it comes to me to do it. And I'm like, this is, first of all, it's kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. It was a little weird at first. I'm like, what's going on? But it was so relaxing. I instantly relaxed and kind of softened, like my shoulders kind of softened a little bit.
Yes.
And I just relaxed. It was awesome. And I'm like, this is something I need to do more often. And it's so important because, again, it's that reconnection. It's a great first step, great way to start this process of how do we give ourselves peace and calm in the new year. Sarah, you, first of all, have shared so many great things that people can do, practices that are going to be so helpful. So I probably should have said this when we started, but take notes in this episode. If you need to go back and listen, jot some notes down. Sarah's got some great suggestions. But I just want to thank you for sharing what's been on your heart about this season. I know it's going to bless so many people out there listening. So thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.